Welcome to a spark of awareness. We live in a time where we are constantly being stimulated, prompted by systems, by algorithms, by AI. But when we outsource our answers, we slowly give away our authority, our inner voice, our self-mastery. Conscious leadership has no shortcut, no hack, and it can only begin from within. It is the courage to stop escaping and to sit with what's alive and present inside, even when it's very uncomfortable. But that's where growth is. And this podcast is a space for that. This podcast is an evolution. And every week, I will share a 15-minute human prompt, live, non-performative. It is a moment of reflection drawn from my work in conscious leadership, from the journeys of the leaders I coach and accompany, and from what is moving in a collective film of what is humanity and leadership. I am Sophie Vaux, a conscious leadership coach and guide of transformation. I support leaders who are crossing the threshold right now from the old system of leadership, a legacy, into a deeper, more conscious way of being. If the traditional model no longer resonates, know that you are not alone, and that is your weekly practice. This is your time with your inner world. This is your weekly spark of awareness. Welcome. Welcome to a new episode of A Spark of Awareness. So, I am opening a new series about different themes that I have studied recently because I've been traveling, I've been attending some leadership training, somatic training to understand more about humans, human behavior, psychology, and to integrate it in my coaching. And so a theme I felt very strong about sharing today is survivor patterns. Who am I when I'm not trying to survive? And this theme is very present for everyone I know, most people I know living in modern society, where we spend our time doing things from a point of survival. How will I be safe? How will I be okay financially? Can I live? And it's amplified, emphasized by the things that make us not feel so safe these days in the world. When you look at the moment at the war in the world, we just had, unfortunately, very sadly, a terrorist attack in Berlin last weekend during the Pride parade. A car ran over a crowd on Saturday night and killed one person and injured 16 people. It just amplifies a collective sense of fear and that we're not safe. When we look at the economy, there's more and more gap between the people who own 90% of the wealth and the rest of the population, people like us who just are trying to make a living, to live in a place, to have food, to enjoy their lives. It's a struggle. And when we look also at unemployment rate and how many people are fired these days, especially in tech, being replaced by the commodity of machine software, AI, it creates a collective sense of unsafety and being in survival mode. And I want to name it because it's very present, and at the same time, well, it's true, but we live in a time when we look at all those events, it's like it's not safe to live, it's not safe to be in this world. This is also what prevents us from making the right decision for ourselves, to go back to our sovereignty, what we can control, our power. And that's what I want to talk about today, especially for leaders, founders who feel at the moment when they're building their business, they're on a new venture, they feel helpless. And what's driving really the decision for them, it's not how can I create something of value for the market, or how can I create something that helps evolve the world for more safety, more sustainability. It's not decision coming from that place as what can I do that will make money so I can live feeling safer, because I don't know who I am if I stop this company. I don't know who I am if I stop. pushing hard. I don't know who I am if I don't have this startup or this role. So let's get into that. Who are you if you weren't leading from survival patterns? And how do you lead a life without this survival program that you've had for so long? Who are you if you're not surviving? How would you lead if you weren't afraid of failing, being judged publicly, being wrong? So many people I know are afraid to be exposed, to be wrong. But isn't that the point of entrepreneurship? That you take risk. You're wrong, you make mistakes because you're here to try something that others haven't tried. You're here to push boundaries. You're here to be at the edge of progress and evolution. And for that, you need to be wrong a few times before you can find truth. And so for the ones who are caring in this moment about the sense of purpose, impact, what impact in the world would you have if you were leading from your essence rather than your fear? And when I work with my clients in leadership, in my coaching, we spend quite a lot of time in talking about it, in intellectualizing the problem. And I understand this is an important step to understand what we're talking about. But I'm evolving further my practice in transformation because the answer is not in the mind. Yes, we can understand the problem, and it's good to identify the problem, but knowing the problem is quite different from changing the source of a problem. And maybe you've done coaching, you've done courses, all of that. You know what to do, and still, when you know what to do, please connect with yourself. If you are resonating with this, you freeze, or you keep betraying yourself for money, for recognition, for safety, for power. And you can fix the symptoms with the business tactics. You can fix the business. But why are you making the business? You will not fix it with the mind. Why am I feeling empty? Why am I afraid to see what's there if I stop working? Who am I if I'm not succeeding? Those are the real questions that you're trying to answer by pushing the business. But they will never go away, those questions, because they are about you. And so the work I'm doing has been going deeper in my coaching because we can't stay at the level of the mind. The level of the mind is where 20%, and I'm generous here, 20% of your potential is. But there's so much wisdom in our body, in our heart. The heart is so much more intelligent than the mind. In the mind, this is where we create all the stories, all the distortion, all the fears, but the heart always knows. And we are not living in the heart right now. And so that's the work I've been exploring, doing. So if you followed my work around somatic, nervous system, and also working with plant medicine, that's where I have pushed the limits of the mind, because the mind was protecting me so much from the truth, from what was on the other side of my unhealthy ego. And that's what I see in all the leaders I support in a company. And why the mind is there to protect? Because it's there to protect from something that was very painful. It did not happen now. It happened very likely when you were young, a child. The brain, 90% of the brain develops between the age of 0 and 7 years old. So everything you've experienced in that young age has shaped who you are. And when we are that age, and if you have children, you can see that, we absorb everything as a sponge. And all the most painful, difficult events, even when parents were caring or doing the best that they could, knowing what they know to care for the children, still what we experienced inside was very different. A sense of abandonment, a sense of when we had to express the truth, we had to compromise, we had to shut down because that was criticized, that was punished, that was suppressed. And I'm going to give example here of some events that maybe you have experienced that really program very young and condition who you are in the body. When you experience a traumatic event, and it doesn't have to be a big event, but stressful enough to affect your nervous system, The body in that moment had to contract to survive the event. For example, it could be a loving parent, but who threatened you in the moment, you didn't feel safe, you contract in your chest, in the guts, to just endure the moment. Or parent who abandoned you for real, like a parent who's leaving you or leaving the family, or a parent who couldn't show up to pick you up at school and you've been waiting for hours and feeling in distress. It's contraction in the chest. And that's when, young age, your body forms this way and remembers it's not safe. It's not safe to rely on someone. Or a kid who bullied you at school, and it creates that contraction in the shoulder and the neck, that anger, that moment where you couldn't defend yourself, or you couldn't be angry and push back and set your boundaries. And all of that set for the rest of your life how you're going to respond to similar events. And it always sends you back to the source of those events. And until you heal and you transform those events that have been conditioning you to react in a certain way in your body, you're going to be a slave. And I'm actually meaning those words to your own memory. And that's the work we do to reclaim your power, when in the age of an adult you would react very differently, but you are not conditioned anymore by your body. How does that translate later? Those very young incidents. For example, if you didn't feel safe to be yourself, you were limited when you were young, it translates that I don't feel safe with others. I don't trust others, if you were bullied, for example. If you were limited to be your full self, you were with parents that maybe were more controlling, don't do this, don't do that, don't say this, don't say that, then you internalize that you're not loved, you're not accepted for who you are. And then it translates as, I am not accepted for who I am. And then that translates later in love, in leadership, in how you show up in your entrepreneurship. Or maybe you had conditional love, that you would have safety and approval from parents only if you were doing what they were telling you. So it creates a very young age that sentiment that I'm not enough, I never be enough, I have to do more and more and more, so I'm worthy of love, or I'm worthy of safety. So I truly believe with all this work I've done for myself and accompanying my clients, working at retreats, even my own training, the future of therapy is going to reach a ceiling very soon. And we see that for my clients telling me, I've done years of therapy, I know it, I've chewed on the problem, I've put in all the angles, and still I feel stuck. Because the evolution of this work, the transformation is going to happen beyond the mind, in the body, and I would even say further, reprogramming in the nervous system, in the neuronal path, in the prefrontal cortex, where the memory is, reprogram what was there to protect us, to defend us so we could endure the reality, to rewire that so we live from a different place. So that's how we reprogram the survival pattern to how to live more in your essence, in safety, in love, which is what you should have experienced from the beginning of your life. I wanted to share how I have, from very young age, moved from the survival pattern to where I am today, which is feeling safe in my body all the time. See, I grew up in a family where survivorship was the theme. My parents left Vietnam War, they were not safe. They had to find a new land, a new home to feel safe. So most of their life, they had to distrust others. And so they have poured a lot of their own experience into the way they raised us. And I learned very young age, it's not safe to be me, it's not safe to be Asian, it's not safe to be a woman. I learned also that to earn love, I had to work for it. I had to achieve, and I did. So most of my life, I was in survivor mode. I would work really hard to feel safe again, to be enough. And then when I would have enough money, I would still be running in that mode. Even when I started my business 3 years ago, I was still operating in that mode. I had money in the bank. I could live for maybe even 10 years if I were paying attention to my expenses. And still I was running, it's like, it's not enough, push it, you never know. And that was running deep in the nervous system. And I knew deep down intuitively that I'm done with therapy. I'm done with talking about the problem. I'm ready for something more. And that's when I started to explore what was beyond the mind in the somatic. And I traveled to Colombia to sit for the first time with plant medicine, ayahuasca, to really see what was inside. And I could feel in my body the memory of very deep survivor patterns, memories that were not even from me, not even from my parents, but from my grandmother and the parents before her. Because in Vietnam, it's been quite a surviving culture. And colonialism happened, communism happened. So most of people living there are not really feeling safe. They are living every day to survive. Work to get money, to have food, to sleep, to be healthy, and to live. And so today, when I'm living in a quite privileged position, having a home that I own, having health support system, support, education in a developed country, why am I not feeling safe? So that's when I started to work on those parts of myself so I can really be seeing the reality for what it is today, but I'm safe actually. And safety will never happen by externalizing it, outsourcing it, but by reclaiming it and reprogramming it in my body. And that led me to work more and more with plant medicine. And today, even leading that work, being the bridge in the work of consciousness, in the evolution of humans. How do we go beyond the mind? We need to explore what is beyond the mind. We need to let go of our stories, of our memories, of our survival patterns to discover on the other side, who are we when we are not in pain, where we are not having this fire that is just pushing for surviving. I know so many leaders who are afraid to let go of that, because if they let go of that, that doesn't mean that they stop performing, that they stop being themselves. I went through the tunnel to the other side, and I can tell you what you find on the other side is you. Who you are in your purest form if you were not shaped by fear, by things that never belonged to you in the first place and that don't belong to you today, that don't make sense. On the other side is who you are really creatively, freely, if you are not afraid. And don't worry, you will still perform, but you will perform in a way that is much more sustainable and much more you, that you would even ask yourself, do I care to perform? And it's very scary for people to go on the other side. I get that. Because when we're so familiar with how we run, how we roll, with the control, with all of the familiarity of our pains, our story, it's easy to keep going. But you're here listening to this because you feel this is time for a change. This is time to let go. And how can I move forward? What are the next steps? Can I be guided so this is happening in a safer way, in a way that maybe has some path, some little milestones? And that's the work I've been doing. So if that resonates with you today, I would like to invite you to something I have never done before, but it has emerged in my work. I'm going to introduce more somatic techniques and plant medicine in my work as a bridge for you to journey into your deeper consciousness and discover who you are if you were not carrying that identity, that survival part, that deep program that never belonged to you. And we are hosting a webinar on the 11th of August, save the date, and I will share the registration link. So I will introduce more of that work and what's the science, because there is a science working with technology of plant medicine. And in the work of therapy, many therapists have reached a ceiling now. That's why they started to integrate psilocybin in their work. And this is very exciting, this evolution of work, and I'm going to be part of it. And I want to share with you what's the knowledge, what's the wisdom of nature, basically, much, much older than your life, than the life of your grandparents, but even the society. And it's a form of technology. It's very ancient knowledge and wisdom of how we live with each other as part of nature, as nature. And we forgot that in the modern world today because we're living so much in the mind. And it's time to reconnect with the body, where the memory is. So I hope to see you there, and I'm going to share more about that work. Next week, we're going to tap into the mask. That's something that I've deepened more into, and in my work I will introduce that. What is the mask that you're wearing? We're all wearing masks. Are we in autopilot with a mask, or are you aware of that mask? Do you choose to wear that mask, or are you ready to let go of that mask to live in your authentic self? So before we close for the day, as usual, I would like to invite a practice of meditation. So close your eyes right now and connect to your breathing and feel the space. Feel your legs on the floor. Feel where you're sitting right now or wherever you're listening. Close your eyes and just make space to be with you. Notice maybe the noises around you, the senses, the smell, the touch, the sensation in your body, and just observe. And start to slow down. Slow down your breathing. And breathing in and breathing out. And you keep breathing in and breathing out slowly at your pace. Breathing in, breathing out. And just deepen your breath and observe what's there. Breathing in, breathing out. And notice if you have any thoughts, any busyness in your mind. And when that happens, you take a deep breath in and you let go of that thought, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. And notice what's there, this feeling in you. How this resonates with you. What's in your body and not in your mind that you haven't uncovered yet. Or the wisdom that is there and is just waiting to be untapped. Breathing in, breathing out. And slowly invite you to come back, being present, and remember that it's always available for you, this practice of meditation and grounding and going back to your body, always. That's the wisdom. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Have a great week. Thank you for tuning in into this weekly reflection, the weekly spark of awareness. After this episode, I invite you to take a few moments with yourself, even just 15 minutes, to sit with what resonated, to breathe, and to notice what is shifting inside. This is a practice, a discipline of presence, truth, and self-connection. If this work speaks to you, I accompany leaders in one-on-one journeys and group experiences of transformation, supporting them as they cross the threshold into a truer and freer way of leading and living. If you feel called to explore this path, I would love to hear your story, and let's connect. Sending you love and courage, and have a great week ahead. This is my spark of awareness.